Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. I want to introduce you to a piece of furniture I built in 2011. It was a hand tool project from rough lumber to finished, nothing but hand tools. If you're interested or thinking about doing that, I'm going to show you some of the processes and procedures. You might like this. I'm Rob Cosman and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help you take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new to our channel, be sure to subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and don't forget to turn on the notification on your mobile device so you'll know every time we release a new video. Good? All right, back to the bench. This is a bookcase with adjustable shelves made out of northern white pine. It is 32 inches long or wide, 41 inches tall, and 9 5/8 inches deep. Your shelves are 8 3/4. I'm going to walk you through all the different procedures that we did and give you a little insight, actually demonstrate a few of them for you. So when I say we did it all by hand, or I did it all by hand, what I mean is we bought lumber from the lumber yard. So this has been milled, cut actually, and it has been dried, and then that's how we get it. So it's got a rough surface on all four edges, or two surfaces and two edges, and then it's been random lengths and random width. We go through and with hand planes, scrub plane, jointer, smoother, squares, winding sticks, we make each piece flat, smooth, and square on all 6 surfaces before we actually start. So when you look at that and you realize each one of these boards in the back, all of those pieces, that in itself is a lot of work. All right, so let's start with the actual construction. The most obvious are the dovetails on the top 2 corners. Now, by the way, this was made, as I mentioned, in 2011, and it's actually survived quite well in my home. There's a few marks on it, but that's to be expected after that number of years. And I did it out of pine, and I really like pine because it ages so beautifully. It just keeps this deeper and deeper patina over the years, whereas most woods either get bleached out or get so dark you lose all the figure. This one just keeps getting better. So what we used here was called a mitered edge dovetail. So it's a combination of a miter and a through dovetail. If you look at it, it looks pretty normal down here, but on the top side, where you should see pins right to the end, you don't see any here. Instead, we take these last 2 bits and we cut it in a miter so that you can carry this bead all the way around nice and neat. If it was a normal through dovetail, you actually have a butt joint here, and it's pretty impossible to carry a bead all the way through that. So that's on the 2 top corners, and I've done videos on these, and it shows you exactly how to do this. What's complicated about this one is, as you're putting it together, these tails have to seat down here at the bottom at the same time the miters front and back close. And that's always a bit of a precarious moment in the process of cutting the joint. Requires really careful layout. So the rest of the case was put together with something called a through wedge tenon. I wanted these shelves to be adjustable so that you don't have a fixed height and you can accommodate whatever books you have. But in order to make it strong, that bottom shelf had to be fixed. And we did what's called a through wedge tenon. So the board itself is sitting in a shallow dado. A dado is a groove cut across the width of the board. And then these parts that you see right here are actually a continuation of this piece, with the exception of the walnut. So the mortise, which is a rectangular shaped hole, is actually flared. It's wider on this side than it is on this side, so it looks kind of like an internal dovetail. Before you put it together, you make 2 cuts in this portion called the tenon, and after you've assembled it, you drive wedges that are the same shape as what would be the void before you apply them, and you glue them and pound them in, and they push this portion of the tenon in that direction and this portion in that direction, and when the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces are all glued together, they become one piece, and it creates an internal dovetail, a very strong joint. But you have to be very careful in the layout, and I've done videos on this. We can leave a link to that. You have a very careful layout, because when that wedge goes in, you have to make sure that it brings these pieces tight so that they fill that opening and it's nice and clean. So that's on both corners, makes a very, very strong joint. So to dress this up a little bit, I already mentioned it once, we cut a bead on the inside. And this is cut with a molding plane. I'm actually going to demonstrate it for you. But we used the bead on the inside of the top and the 2 sides. We used the bead on this piece. Now what you're looking at right here is just a block of wood that we cut a bead on there and I glued it to the underside so that we could stiffen up this piece. Typically a bookcase is going to have things set on it and you don't want that to sag over time, so that really beefs it up. On the back, the actual back itself helps to support this from sagging in the middle. And then in order to make these a little bit stronger, if I can get that out, rather than make it out of a 2-inch thick piece of lumber, which would make it really heavy, we applied 2 pieces, and again, used the bead down here in the bottom just to dress it up a little bit, but that helps to stiffen that drawer. Pardon me, that shelf. So let me show you how we did this. These are old antique planes that I've picked up at various places. So that creates a bead. You can see the profile as you look down the end. And I'm going to try it out on a piece of pine. So you simply go through and continue cutting until you have the entire profile. This is set a little more aggressively than I normally would, but and when you're done, you have that profile. And if the blade is nice and sharp, you don't have to sand, it's already finished. Now, this plane's in hard shape. If you look down there, it's no longer straight, so it's a little bit awkward to use. But you can make them yourself, and if you're looking and saying, why didn't you use a router? Well, use one of those one time and you'll understand why it's so interesting and fun to do. No dust, no danger, no noise. Hey, if you like this video, we have more. Our newsletter has subscriber-only content, monthly discount on tools, and anything we bring out that's new, subscribers get first crack at it. Click on the link below. Let's get back to work. Now, to make this piece period appropriate, I didn't want to use plywood on the back. So these are actually solid wood boards, solid pine boards. But we did what was kind of a modified shiplap. So that as they, remember, now you've got a long, what is that span? You've got almost 31 inches of wood. So there's going to be a fair bit of seasonal expansion. As the humidity increases, these boards are going to absorb some of it and they're going to expand. And as they shrink in the winter, when it dries out, they're going to shrink. So the gap is going to change a little bit. But because that bead's in there, that kind of allows for that. So what's happened is this piece, actually I'll turn this around and show you from the back side. So the first thing we had to do is cut a groove, a 1/4 inch groove, all the way around the top 3 pieces. And I'll show you what I did for that. I actually make this plane. I use it enough that it's justified making them. So very similar to this one, except the profile. So we've got a 1/4 inch blade in there, and you simply run that over the piece you're cutting until it bottoms out. That's the nice part of this, is you never have to worry about the depth being uniform because it will go until it can no longer cut. And what's happening is this part is bottoming out right here. So I really like it when I'm building drawers because I never have to worry about the drawer bottom not fitting properly because the depth of the groove is not uniform. That guarantees it. So with that groove all the way around, what we did is this first piece is secured down here with one brass screw, and it's pretty much bottomed out all the way around. So, and this piece is secured right here, and this one doesn't move for the most part, neither does this one. So all of your expansion is going to take place in these 2 joints and in these 2 joints. This piece has to be allowed to move in both directions. Now we're going to flip this around again and look at this side, so this will make sense. So since this one can't go that way, it can only come this way. This piece has got a bead cut on it, and it has a tongue, and that tongue slips underneath this piece. So there's a rabbet cut on the end of this. So as this moves, that groove right there is going to get a little wider, a little narrower. Over here, this same piece has a bead cut on this side and the tongue on it, and that fits underneath the rabbet on this piece. Now this center piece has a rabbet on both sides. It doesn't have a tongue, it doesn't have a bead on it. So what we did over here, we reversed over here so that now you're going to get a little bit of movement here, and the 2 screws that we put them in The center one is in a hole the exact diameter of the screw shaft, but this one and this one are in a larger diameter hole, so there's a little bit of movement, a little bit of allowance there. And then everything just seems to work, and over the period of however long it's been, nothing has happened. The sides haven't blown apart. And as I mentioned, occasionally you'll see a little wider groove on one side than the other, but the bead makes all that blend in, and you really don't notice it. Now, in case you're wondering what these lines are, this is just oxidation from a shelf sitting in there or books being on there that it's changed the color, but you have to be able to live with type of that thing if you're going to build with solid wood and actually have it functioning. And we put the same supportive piece down here, so the bottom is only 3/4, but that piece being on there and glued to it stiffens that up substantially. And then I never like to have flat sides on the bottom. I find that it's too easy to make it rock, so I always do something to create more or less feet that just will make for a more stable. Or if you have to come in and adjust one, you've got a lot less material to remove. So that is a northern white pine bookcase. It's, like I said, it can be a little bit of intimidating at first, but if you take it one piece at a time and master each one of those processes, do the whole thing, and you'll end up with something like this. It'll last for centuries, and you'll have a ton of fun doing it. Hope you enjoyed this. If you like my work and enjoy my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos and help take your woodworking to the next level. I've always said, better tools make the job so much easier. If you click on the link below, the chisel and plane icon, it'll take you to our site and introduce you to all the tools that we actually manufacture right here in our shop. It'll also give you information on our online and in-person workshops.